Hey family, so in today's video I want to talk about things I really wish I knew before I purchased my first home. In Proverbs 24 verse 6 says, "For by wise counsel," what? "Wise counsel thou shalt make war. Thou shalt have a strategy in knowing how to address an issue that you're trying to tackle. And in the multitude of counselors there is safety." And that's going to be my biggest thing, as this information is a conglomerate of information you would have if you're considering buying your first home or second or whatever number it is. In this aspect, I'll be speaking to my former self first, who was looking for a house but was really doubting I could even have a house without even looking into it. Oh, I don't make a lot of money. I ain't gonna be able to afford nothing. Things in New York is expensive. I ain't gonna be able to afford nothing. Oh, my credit score is not good. I'm not gonna be able to afford nothing. But what we really want to do is we want to assess what we can have, and we want to assess when we can have it, right? So I'm gonna do the latter first, right? To be able to assess when I can have it will be determined by my credit score if I'm looking for a conventional loan. Now this shows the average of what that would look like. On average is 6 months, but realistically we know it's going to vary person to person, right? It's going to vary based off of how many delinquent payments we have, how high is our debt income is, and how long this has been going on for. Right. So these are some factors that's going to vary. But one thing I know without a doubt is that if you start applying what I talked about in the last video with great intensity, it is going to impact in a positive way, right? If we're starting to take away over expenditures, right, reducing our expense, increasing our income, whether that's through additional work, picking up another part-time job, what have you, and utilizing the excess to actually start eliminating our debt, it's going to change our credit score a lot quicker than what we think. I'll give you an example. Individual that has been using 100% of their credit card allotment and reduces it down to 30% of their credit card allotment and are able to maintain it there, is going to increase your credit score. So if we're applying the principle of using the snowball effect, where we're paying off our credit cards, totally moving over to the next debt and paying that off, that's going to help to increase our credit score favorably. Another thing is that automatic payments also changes your credit score in a favorable outcome. Once you give the utility, the landlord, phone bills, once you start setting those up for automatic payments, the institution is actually able to see that, hey, I have allowance where the money's going to come at a structured time, agreed upon a time, and they're giving me approval to pull this money, reduces the risk factor of it being late. Number two is once they start to see that they've been pulling the money about 2 to 3 times, so 2 to 3 months, and they see that, hey, there hasn't been any issues, any delinquency of payments, any insufficient funds, they actually report that to the credit bureau, and your credit score will start to increase favorably, especially if you were delinquent in payment. So this helps in that manner. Also, the thing that we discussed is, not borrowing anymore. We talked about praying, asking God for counsel. He will help land it onto your issue, and he will pave ways. I tell you, it's not just about the practical. The practical and supernatural gives you great yields, right? We talked about delinquency. By you not choosing to ignore the bill, by you calling the institution and say, hey, work out a deal with me. This is kind of too high. Let's work out something where we can cut the cost lower. Working out a payment strategy and paying it off also helps to increase your credit score. So as we're doing these multiple things at the same time, you're going to be able to get multiple impacts where your credit score is increasing because you're hitting it from different regions. I hope we are together. I feel like I'm speaking fast. Hope I'm not. I hope we're clear. And the last thing is, not inquiring any more debt, not inquiring another car loan or doing student loan or personal financing. Something that's going to equate to a credit pull, but also is going to equate to increasing your credit ratio is by you not doing this is going to help you in a favorable way of being able to obtain a mortgage and to be able to attain a healthy mortgage. Individuals say, hey, well, I lost my job or I quit my job and now I'm working another job. I got to wait 2 years. That is not the case in some occasions. Based on your location, where you're at, and what job type you have, that's not an issue. For some people, right? If your job is a high demand job, if you're an electrician, you're a plumber, you are a carpenter, that's blue collar. So let's give me some white. I'll give some white collar examples. If you are a programmer, a doctor, a nurse, in the medical field, accountant or something of that sort, anywhere where there's a high demand for your job, if you quit and you go to work another job that's doing the same thing, same level of service, they will evaluate 2 years of the two institutions via you providing a W-2 or your last check stub or your last check stub for the last 3 months. As long as you're working at this new institution for at least 3 months, as long as you're not like a CNA saying, now I want to become an electrician, that's not going to work. All right. But you're providing the same level of service, they'll look at it. Also, what they take into consideration when giving you your loan amount is any other passive or other income that you have coming in. Let's say you did take the extra job, whether it's doing Uber, Grubhub, you become an independent contractor, doing consultant, whatever that service is, and you're getting paid, whatever you put as net income on your taxes for you being an independent contractor, or technically it's seen as a business, they will calculate that as an aspect of income. And if you've been doing it consistently over time, they will calculate that as steady income, and that will be computed into the mortgage and the type of mortgage you can have, meaning monetary allotment of loan type, right? So you don't have to feel discouraged. And if your situation is the case where you've quit jobs and doing a different profession or different field or line of work, then you have the 2 years, but there's certain things you can do within your 2 years. I remember with me, like I said, former me, I was like, man, I can't really afford. I can't afford a mortgage. My credit's not great. I can't afford a mortgage. I don't make a lot of money. I remember speaking to one of my elders, and he recently moved out to Connecticut. I was living in New York at the time, and I spoke to him, and I prayed and I heard God, just saying, just move, trust the process, and ask. And I remember I was speaking with my elder. I call him, uncle. And I was like, Uncle Hans, I'm looking, man. I salute you guys. How did you guys do it? And he said, man, I got a really good broker. The realtor was but the broker was well. And the broker helped hook me up with a really good realtor. But the broker, he said, just speak to him. So I speak to him. He, check my credit. He saw that he said, for him, he said it's workable. I was like, what? I recently paid off my debts, any debt obligations I had. So that was helpful for me. And then he started to look at other stuff. He started to look at what I was paying for rent. He looked at whatever I was paying for utilities, my phone. He started looking at other assessments. He started speaking with me. I said, hey, so how you going to do this? You're going to find work in Connecticut? I said, no, I'm planning on driving back and forth. He drafted a letter, had me sign it, and he was able to help me to find a lender that was willing to give me a loan, though I thought I couldn't. Through prayer and God working that out, I was informed. And because, speaking around, looking for information, I was able to find the right person by God's providence to help me get a home at a time that I didn't think I could with the amount of money I was making. The only thing I had to work on was getting a down payment. And it just so happened, like I said, you pray and fast, render your thoughts unto the Lord, and he will establish your plans. Romans 8:28 says all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord in accordance of his will. And I remember, man, I was able to get a job opportunity that helped me to be able to get money that worked for the down payment, at least for the time. And as you render your plans, man, it's not just the strategy, but it's praying and asking God to pave a way. And guys, I tell you, there are people that I've met, even people that I've met here in rural parts of America, that where they've prayed and God opened up opportunities, miracles, and ways that they never thought was possible, and technically probably shouldn't have been possible, but we serve a big and mighty God. So the biggest thing going back here is having a plan, getting counsel, and praying to the Lord. So now that we went through the process of what we can do to increase our credit scores and what categories for individuals who may have, parted way with an employer and moved in with another employer, let's assess what we can have. Just for an example, approximately what's the average income for the average American in 2024? Now, this is the number that came out. Some of you may have more, some of you may have less. For this sake, like now, what I want you to do with what you have is you type in what kind of mortgage can I get with my annual salary. Now, in this case, I'm gonna use the average so that we can have us as an assessment. Now, if I still have monthly debts of $250, right, and I make the average American income with a down payment of $20,000, right, I can literally afford a house for $159,000, right? So it's not that I can't get no loan. Now, this is the loan type that I can get. Now, this here it's available in the link, but I'll click on it so you can see. And it's called an affordability calculator. You can Google affordability calculator. There are many of them out there. I like Zillow's affordability calculator. You can also adjust what you want your monthly payment or your annual to be based off of what will fit comfortably. Now, if you see that it's higher than that, it says you may stretch your budget too thin. There's an aspect ratio that they apply when they do the computation. So you can leave it here to say, okay, this is the max if I had zero debt obligations, right? But if I did like what I had before, $250, you see now I can only afford $158. So you see the difference, right, between having no debt versus having a monthly payment. And I highly encourage that you get it down because it's beneficial, as you can see. But let's say we maintain with this. $158 now we know is what we can afford. Now, as we are working or repairing or building or patiently waiting for that 2-year term to come, there's some things that we can utilize with this time. We do know that, hey, the economy changes, market rate changes, things of that sort. But there's certain things we want to know. We want to know what kind of house we can be able to get, what available options that are particularly out there, and what the environment looks like. And that's the biggest thing. If you got kids, that's definitely the biggest thing. If you're single, you still want to think about it because you want to make sure you can live, right, as long as you possibly can. You don't be in an environment that's harmful, health reasons, whatever it is, you want to make sure it's sound. So once we know our threshold, Anne-Marie's looking at areas. She's looking at sex offenders because we got kids. She's looking at what the environment is. We went to go check out the environment a couple of times, feel out what it is to hang out there. When we were in Connecticut, we were definitely fortunate enough to have family from the church, our church family, which allowed us to stay in their home to feel out the area, to feel out what it would be like to drive back and forth from work every day, to feel out the environment and different aspects of the environment. Certain areas are cheaper because maybe it's a safety factor, but primarily it's a GDP factor, right? If the area or the town or the neighboring towns do not have businesses and ways for individuals in that community to make money, you'll find that the price points of the homes are lower. Right? Why New York City is so expensive? There's so many business opportunities. It's kind of like, the business capital. A lot of economy and economical commerce happens here. So there's a lot of fluctuation of money in New York City. So therefore, the prices of home and everything is so high. But once again, moving forward with the principle of seeing what we can afford, we will now then take this schedule here and do a search, right? I'm going to, if I wanted to stay, I was adamant, I got to be in New York. I want to stay here. I would then put in my zip code or area that I'm looking at, and then I will make sure that I have it no higher than up to 50,000. I don't want to be tempted. I don't want to be disappointed, depressed about what I can't have. I want to work with what I can have. And what I'm seeing here is that when you look at from the perspective of Brooklyn and up, I'm seeing a lot of options for condos if I'm trying to keep it in the close to New York City particular region, right? And with it, let me see if I can just find one that I will pick. You will see that you'll find better price points the further up the Bronx you go, right? Brooklyn side, not too much, a handful that's here. New York side up to Harlem, not too much here. We getting into Harlem, into the Bronx, and even in the Yonkers region, there's more. The further away from this economical capital of the world, for lack of better words, I know some of y'all may say it's not. I mean, don't shoot me. You'll see that there are less regions, but a condo is better than nothing, right? We can take the money if we keep the intensity. We take the loan. We buy a condo, and like I said, there's some features out here that are nice. You definitely have to read and look into them, right? But some of the homes are not bad. They're not spacious, for sure, but they have bathrooms, kitchens. You can do all your amenities. Now, let's say we take this one for 139, right? In Tilden Street, Bronx. We work with intensity to pay off the loan. When we pay off the loan, right? Because matter of fact, let's go into further detail. I'm rushing it. Let your boy take his time. So let me go to what our payment will be. Payment calculator, right? So this is just a rough estimate. It's not realistic. This is a rough estimate. And then also on the affordability calculator, there are advanced features where you can make your adjustment, right? Your debt to income ratio, your interest rate, which is about average right about now. PMI, which is insurance you pay so that the lender can, so that if you default on the loan, the lender can make a claim and get paid for what the mortgage is and still go sell a house. I don't make the rules. That's just how it works. The property tax and HOA dues is not computed here, but because here is a condo, you see that there is a HOA fee. So the principal in the mortgage of this $130,000 home is really $539, but you have to pay HOA fees for this place. And once this is paid off, you still have to pay the HOA fees. And that's the reason why I always say that when a person is looking to purchase a house, if the max is 130, if the max is 158 that we can have, then we don't want to use the whole 158. We will want to shop around and see if we can get something a little bit lower, because they're working towards clauses in New York City. I'm not sure where they're at with that now, but this HOA fee can change. And the HOA fees is pretty much for the upkeep and maintenance of the common space that you use. The hallways, the elevator, the garbage area, the incinerator, I think they used to call it. The incinerator, if it has a playground, the foreground, if there's a doorkeeper, pretty much anything that's common space, the maintenance of that is where your HOA fees goes. As you can see here, there's not an allocation of taxes, which I'm not sure why, but there should be. And then they have your home insurance, which is listed here. So note that this $1,490 a month is actually going to particularly change, right? It may be a little bit higher, maybe $100, $200 higher, depending on what your taxes are going to be, as well as what your actual insurance and other adjustments are going to be. Is this, favorable for what you can afford in this area? I mean, it definitely is not bad. And what you have the capability of doing is, as you utilize your additional money to make sure to add additional payments to the principal or the principal of the home, and you're able to white out this debt quicker. Let's say, 4 or 5 years go by, right? Hopefully it doesn't take that long, but I know that everybody's not going to be 10 months like it was for me and Anne-Marie with the second home. But let's say 4 or 5 years go by and you're providing great intensity. Remember, you don't have any other debt. So now you're applying this now to your principal and you pay it off. You can now sell this home. Let's say you sold a home right back for 139,000, right? You still have that same job. And let's say the interest rate is the same. It can go up, it can go lower. It all depends on market and time. You now have an additional $140 rounding to add to that $158,000. So now you have the capability of buying a close to a $300,000 home, right? Because with the cash you get for the sale of this house, You combine it with what your approval to get a loan for, which we know of, and then you're able to work towards getting that home. I remember is in Genesis 29, 28 or 29, where Jacob literally worked within the 7 years after having his family to be able to get the freedom that he wanted so that he can be able to go back to the land that he wanted. And by the time he left, he was able to have enough money, enough wealth that he had servants coming along with him. He strategized it goat by goat, time by time, moment by moment, diligence with diligence. So if you're trying to get to a better home, but you only have the $48,000 that you're making, then you can leverage what you have where you're at and let it grow and work towards you, versus you taking that money, paying for rent, thinking that you're not entitled to anything or have the ability to get something. You now have an aggressive strategic plan that can get you into the better position, get you into your quote unquote forever home, but it just takes time for you to get there. I hope that that's clear, family. I really hope that particularly make sense, right? I want you to consider, I went through all this. I want you to consider, matter of fact, I'll make myself small. I want you to consider, right, that the further out we go, right, away from New York, have better options that you can have for within the same allotment of money that you have. Instead of having what was the studio? Instead of you having a 700 square foot, you can actually have something with a bigger amount of size, a bigger amount of property, only if you're willing to sacrifice driving a couple of more hours, right? I know for me, finding about Connecticut, Waterbury, Connecticut, for me, which is at the time, it was, I think, number 4 worst economic wise, means that the price points was very good. Some parts of Waterbury is dangerous, but for me, the neighborhood, the environment, and not just my block, because, sometimes you have some of those like unique blocks, but literally several blocks around the area of where we were at was like a United Nations. Diversity, the people were nice. It was a good environment to particularly be in. And with you praying and searching, God will help you to find gems. For me, I had to ride 2 hours a day. During traffic times, around 2 hours. If it was off hours, it's about an hour and a half. And then when it was on Friday, where everybody's trying to leave the city, I ain't gonna lie, some days it was 3 on those Fridays. But for me, seeing my children, my daughter at the time, able to go outside and play, man, the first time I saw it, I was like, man, this is well worth it. This is well worth the 2-hour drive. Man, I'll do this every day, no problem, right? Because it allotted the opportunity to have a better quality of life with the allotment that I had, right? And then, like I said, for me, the obligation was to go back and forth. Waterbury, fourth toughest economy. Doesn't mean that there wasn't work an hour away, which is in areas like Hartford. It doesn't mean I couldn't get work in Waterbury, Connecticut, but the drive was to continue to work where I was at and to be able to have this home. And honestly, what you need to take into consideration when you're buying a home away from where you're working, where you're going to be commuting a couple of hours, is the factor of cost for it. For me, I had to pay toll and I had to pay gas. And though I was paying around $1,200 for the mortgage, I also had to pay $800 in gas and toll just due to that driving back and forth. So therefore, truly, my mortgage was really $2,000 when you take into consideration. But the question is, would I have been able to find a good piece of property? I would have been probably paying an apartment if I didn't have the favor that I had that got allotted through my boss to be able to speak with one of her friends. I would have been paying a lot more than that for a apartment, which would have been a lot smaller. I have the allotment, I have the space, I have the environment for my kids to go run around and play, and I'm paying into something that is an asset that I can always sell at a particular later date. So for me, it's definitely worth it. And that's what I want you to consider, that, as you look out, think about the commute back and forth, think about the sacrifice, especially if you have family or not. You have the option of paying for something local, paying it off, building it over time, flipping it to be able to pay for something else that will get you to your ideal home and your ideal location. And if you have a good job, man, you can consider, or if you have a great profession where there's a high demand, you can always consider moving anywhere and making it happen. And if you're like me, who was born and raised in one area and one environment, right? God is not one that wants us to be stationary based off of culture and experience, but wants us to be able to move in faith. And if you still have that itch for, from Caribbean background, for some roadie, for some good cooking that New York provides, it's always a 3 hour away, right? You save up some money, make it, well, 3 hours for me. And in that case, if I was living in Connecticut, it would have been a 2 hour ride. Save some money. Go ahead. I'm buying this, and I'm gonna have my fix for the next 2 months, right? I'm gonna enjoy that 1 week or those 3 meals or those 4 meals, and I may see them next quarter. You know what I mean? But you have the ability to better the quality of life for your family. Do so. You have to have a better quality of life for yourself. Do so. Do not allow your mind and your experience or personal setbacks or internal feelings to stop you from moving in faith as you pray with God. Don't just say, "Hey, I see the benefits, I see the stats, let me make the move," but actually really consider what God wants you to do. And this is a strategy that you can use to particularly implement it, whether it's to stay local or to go abroad, right? I did some searches of some other homes, right? Of other studios. So this one is in Corona. This one was another one. This is a condo, right? Similar square footage, and it's just condo because of its size. It's a small home, but it's workable if you're by yourself. I mean, no kids. And then instead of having to pay the 139 plus 900 condo, the HOA fees, this one here is 72,000, which means that you don't have to pull out for a full loan. You have a nice space. I think this one was an hour and a half commute, so you do have to take that into consideration. But you can always, like I said, at a later date, flip it and sell it. But there's no pressure that if the HOA fees change, you are now strapped for making payments to your mortgage, because now your expenses are a lot higher than you anticipated. Like I said in the last video, you have the ability to negotiate, and you can extend your loan from a 30-year loan to a 40-year if you're saying that you have hardships, which would bring your payments down smaller, so that you can manage the adjustment if there was a HOA fee that went up that you couldn't accommodate for. All right, I don't mean this to be too long. I just want you to see different options. Like I said, this is further out. I think this is 2.5 hours away. You have a lot more space, right? And it's still a small field. The only thing that there is no HOAs for this because it's not a private home. So yes, you would have to cut your own grass, right? All the other sort of maintenance and stuff like that will now become on you. But now you have a bigger allotment of land. It's remote. There are no particular neighbors on this one. The grass looks like it needs a work in progress, right? But you have the ability to grow some items, and you have a shed and storage where you can do some raised beds and cultivate it yourself. And then here's another one, which I think is about 2.5 to 3 hours out. It's for $119,000. But here you have a lot of space. It's 1.4 acres. So that means you can do a lot with 1.24, but also your neighbors, your surrounding environment, you have more seclusion. Yes, the floors may particularly need work, but that's something that you can do over time. And you have a lot of space that you're able to work with, and you have privacy and seclusion. Luke 14:28 says, "For which one of you are intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it." You also want to think about your quality of life, your sacrifices, your faith in God and in yourself in home maintenance. And that's to help you determine whether you want to get a fixer-upper or move-in ready. As you've seen in these videos or in the sample selection I pulled, there's nothing structurally issue, and I made sure that not that I made sure, but you see that there's nothing structurally wrong with the issues. And the houses, they're okay. They're okay. Some of them, you may want something a little bigger or whatnot, but for the price range and where you're at, you get with what you can get until you're able to get what you want. And that's super, super important. A wise man thinks ahead, a wise man thinks ahead, a fool doesn't, and even brags about it. Right? Check to see what your current income allots for a mortgage, which is what we did. Work towards getting your deposits. Unused taxes are good, and you want to map out your next 5 to 10 years. All right. You want to determine how long you want the mortgage and a spending plan along with it. If you want to have it in 5 years, you got to go a little bit harder, a little bit aggressive. You want to make sure your loan amount is maybe smaller so it can be easier for you to make off those payments, and do a combination of all the stuff that we talked about from before. Determine the lifestyle and what are practical steps to get to that lifestyle that you want. And that part was super crucial, right? After counting the cost, create every opportunity possible to bring in money and wipe out debt. Pray and providently let the Lord work through you. Track and monitor your progression, and try not to write out the loan for the whole portion of time. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. And that is so, 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 so true, guys. Right? I did before in the video. I'm going to do it again with this one here, which is the amortization schedule. I'm going to click on the one that has home, and I'm going to type in now that we know what we're allotted for, now that we know what we can get, we're going to actually apply that into the amortization schedule. And let's say 30-year, and let's say 7.63, which is pretty current, and include taxes. We could change our home insurance. Let's say we have it for 1,005, but let's say we have it for 950, like it was on the other one, and then we're going to hit calculate payment. Right now, our monthly payment is $996 monthly, and when we look at it, break down the property taxes. Like I said, once we identify the house that we really want, we can be able to identify what these true numbers is over here. Now I'm going to put this on top so that it's above me, and we can see for that $158,000 home, based off on our down payment, our price of the loan is $148,000. In a span of 30 years, we would pay $209,000. I can even round that up to 10. $210,000 in interest by itself for a $148,000 loan. Right? Right? That's like what, 150%. That's 150% of what the loan is. For that 158, we are spending $358,000 over a 30-year time frame. And guys, if you got kids, I mean, you can't be promised of tomorrow. You definitely want to make sure you have life insurance, I mean, to be able to cover your family. But what you want to do is make sure that, hey, you can actually not have to have that spread over time, not have to worry about it. If you got the energy, you got the life force, you got the vitality, work towards paying off those principals. And as I indicated from before, if you do automatic payments and you get paid bi-weekly, then there are 2 checks that are going directly into paying the principal, which shaves off about 7 to 10 years. So therefore, with a little bit additional work or additional income or residual income, or if you and your better half, you have the ability to be able to eliminate the debt. Right? We did the 158 with one source of income. If both of you guys are working, you see that there are homes, right, that are out there. Yes, you can get a better pricing home, and depending on how much money you make, that's fine. But there are price points out here where a family of 5 or a family of 6 can be able to obtain a size of property and particularly make it work. The further out you go, as I said, the cheaper the land based off of the area, population, work opportunities. And if you're self-employed, like me and Ann in our case, where we had, I mean, not only me going back and forth to work, but then the Emery had the business. I mean, I had another business as well, and we were able to work it to bring that income in to be able to eliminate that debt. And then with us, which have a fixer-upper house, can now invest money into fixing up the house, whether it's to pay for somebody to do certain things, like we paid to get the windows and the bathroom done when we first came in here, because it was woo. It was like woo. It was interesting to name the least. It looked like one of them scary movie kind of situations, but you see that you can obtain it. And I definitely, family, want to appeal to you. If you have children, it's for yourself as well, but to make your venture out of the city. And when I went from going to Connecticut, feeling comfortable in Connecticut, Emery's like, nah, we gotta go. Nay, we gotta go. And I'm like, girl, the ink ain't even dry off the signature for the home. You understand what I'm saying? What you mean we gotta go? This ain't gonna work. And I remember fighting it for about, I think it was about two, maybe 2.5 years. And eventually succumbing. And what helped me was reading a book called Country Living by Ellen White. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And this is my plea. If you got kids, definitely want to reconsider not being in the country. I think even for yourself, man, the quality of life, the substantial life that you can have not being in a congested environment is so beneficial. And I remember reading this book, man, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, because there were a certain chain of events that was going on in our environment, even though the environment was good. And remember, I came from like hood Brooklyn, New York, to now being fourth worst economy. I'm like, all right, but it's not as bad. I feel like I ain't gonna die over here. I mean, especially Brooklyn during that time. Brooklyn has changed. But I remember that there were certain things that resonated with me as I read this book, and I would love to take the opportunity to share it with you, right? So just as a entry point, country living provides low purchase price compared to the city. The taxes are lower. I could have did an example on that. I didn't do so. A bigger plot for you to have growth, for you to grow your own food when there were price shortages and all that other stuff. That motivated us to say, you know what? It's time for us to grow our own food, right? You provide safety and seclusion for children. Where we're at, I mean, unless Bambi gonna come and take our children, there's the likelihood of that happening while they're playing outside is not going to. Doesn't mean we can be super negligent, but we give our children freedom to look, play, explore, and have that luxury to be able to run around, take open fresh air, and enjoy God's green earth, right? And provides a potential better quality of life. It may not be that way up front because there's a lot of fixing up if you get in a fixer-upper house, if you don't have a lot of money. But like I said, even in the examples that I've shown, it provides an environment. And you're still going to go to those environments, whether it's the condos or even in the country. You're still going to go to those environments to fill out the atmosphere, to fill out the environment, to fill out how the educational system, if you got children, and to figure out if that's something that you're going to do, participate in, play in, to see what the community is like and see how you would interact with that community. I'll do it. I remember when I was considering coming out to where I'm at now. Considering coming out to quote unquote the country home, right? So I remember like, man, for me, everybody that lives outside of New York City is KKK land. I mean, I don't know if it's predominantly going to be a white area. I don't know what I'm walking into. I don't know what I'm stepping into. And I read this book and I saw the passages and it moved me, and we started looking. And I started to try to do preparation, right? Like I said, my thing is to provide all aspects of stability for my children. And I went and I prayed and I said, Lord, I pray that we don't face any of it. But if we do, I pray that you'll give me the strength to look at it with your lens. And if that is the case, dear Lord, I still don't want it to be done. But if it is, I pray that you shelter my children. And then I started to read books, and I read books like George Washington Carver. He was the biggest one. Booker T. Other books. One that was pro. and then also ones that were predominant. And I remember books like George Washington Carver and stories of him that I would read back to the kids, play for them to listen to and watch, where he is a black man going to Tuskegee to educate black children, black young men and women. That's a more politically correct way to say it, to be able to understand a skill and a trade so that they can be able to have jobs, create jobs, and be able to sustain themselves. He was one that then chose, as a reflection of Tuskegee, to teach farmers who were black and white what to grow. And he was the one that, hey, taught them crop rotation and diversity and the importance of legumes to black and white individuals. And the mindset was to have my kids appreciate who they are, but to understand that Christ calls all of us to serve all people. If this is the movement that I have to take and go through. And like I said, God gave confirmation. And it's weird because the place that he put us in, everybody around us is from Long Island. I'll say 80% of the individuals are from Long Island. So 80% of the individuals that are over here in this region are familiar and comfortable with being around black people. Right. I remember when I drove up and I pulled up to the area, because like I said, my thing is to fill out the neighborhood. It's not to be a hermit. And I remember when I pulled up, we didn't have the house yet, but maybe it was Providence. I said, hey, we're your new neighbors. Or I think I said we're your new neighbors. I meant to say we're potentially your new neighbors, but hey, we're your new neighbors came out my mouth. And the lady was like, oh, okay, cool. And I said, hey, I'm just trying to get a feel out of the environment, the areas, anything that we need to know. And the lady was like, hey, well, it's nice. It's a quiet place. Sometimes people, for the most part, we keep to ourselves, but we're supportive if there's ever help any need. Hey, we're going to have a party in July, I think, or something. That's what she said. And hey, if you guys are here, man, you can feel free to come by us. Now, for me in my heart of hearts, I knew I wasn't. It's too new, kind of new. I don't know this. I need to be able to grow gradually into this transformation. But what it shared was, man, okay, that helped to lead comfortability in the environment and fill it out a little bit. And over time, it definitely, what I thought was a fair has definitely not been a fair for me by God's grace so far. Right. But I just said it to say that you render your plans to the Lord and he will establish your thoughts. Right. And that's been the benefits. But there's a warning. Right. Like I said from the last video, I like to be practical. So I'm gonna meet you, show you where you're at, and I'm gonna give a recommendation. But you have the power to choose better for yourself in any manner. Now, Country Living was the book that I read, and here were some things that hit me as a father. Right, I'm not going to go into that. Here's some things that hit me as a father. Right, so here's chapter 3: an appeal to parents. Whenever possible, it is the duty of parents to make homes in the country for their children. The children and youth should be carefully guarded. I'll make this even bigger. Should be carefully guarded. They should be kept away from the hotbeds of iniquity that are to be found in our cities. I'll take myself all the way out. Let's go to the next one. Right. Chapter 3 on appeal to parents. Let children no longer be exposed to the temptations of the cities that are ripe for destruction. Fathers and mothers, how do you regard the souls of your children? Are you preparing the members of your families for translations into the heavenly courts? Are you preparing them to become members of the royal family? Children of the heavenly King? What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And family, I tell you the truth, around this time, I remember reading, I'm going to give you some more, man. Give you some more. I was driving with my daughter, and she was like, Daddy. I said, yeah, baby. She said, smoking is wrong, right? I said, yeah, baby, smoking is wrong. It's not helpful to the body, right? It damages the lungs and other body parts, and it's not good. She says, but I have the desire to smoke. I'm like, girl, you're not even 5. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You have the desire to smoke. She may be around 5. Maybe it could have been around 5 or recently coming up. And I'm like, what do you mean you have the desire to smoke? And I knew it was because she was seeing individuals in her influence and in her environment that she sees day in and day out that is smoking. Another one was during this summer, reading this book, A family behind us was on a constant arguing. I mean, cursing, screaming. The worst of the worst is being exposed, to the point a couple of times I had to bring the kids inside, and this is resonating with me. Yo, listen, they're picking these up, and the thing is not to have our children be hermits. That's never the intent. And my kids go out, they socialize, they show their quirkiness, their uniqueness. I mean, whatever side of them, I allow them to be able to express it. But it's about, are we providing an environment where they're not bombarded with this all the time? Are we putting them in a society where they're outside being shaped more than they're being shaped in the house because they're coming home for meal, maybe homework, and going to sleep? Our children are canvases. They're like blank, empty canvases. And we allow voluntarily and involuntarily for people to paint on this canvas with permanent paint because we choose not to shelter or safeguard the canvas, right? Being able to expose it. By God's grace, every question that Sage asked me, I was able to answer it from a practical standpoint and from what the Bible says, right? So she has a well-rounded approach, which is very, very important. But it's about helping her to combat it. And I remember there were, like, sections of music and things of that sort that, I couldn't have or don't have any control over as we commute back and forth day to day, that now is sheltered so that when they are, because I got 3, when they are exposed, it's now something that's more controllable. We have the opportunity to discuss, and it's not a part of their normal, custom, everyday palette that they have to face with these desires. I hope that's clear. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to keep going, family. I'm going to keep going. All right. Next one is chapter 3, appeal to parents again. Parents flock with their families to the cities because they fancy it. Easier to attain a livelihood there than in the country. The children, having nothing to do in school, obtain a street education. From evil associates, they acquire habits of vice and dissipation. Right? The parents see all of this, but it will require a sacrifice to correct their error. And they say where they are, and they stay where they are until Satan gains full control of their children. Right? This is just based off of environment, right? This is the call, based off of environment. And honestly, 100%, you pray as you read this. You let me know if I'm lying, right? Or that if she's lying, right? Chapter 1, a call to leave the cities. The prophet Ezekiel thus enumerates the causes that led to Sodom's sin and destruction: pride, fullness of what? Fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters. And that's, in essence, what is the downfall of some of us, right? Oh, it's hard work. There's a lot to do in the country. Oh, I don't know how I'll make income or livelihood. I won't make as much money as going into the city. But your cost of living is different as well. Your opportunity for self-sufficiency is different as well. And it paves an allotment to be a little bit more labor intensive, but a little bit less idle and a little bit less being in I don't want to say lethargic state, but being more in an idle state where you can miss the blessings of maintaining the land, maintaining your home, the character development, the traits, the object lessons that you're able to pull while you're doing these things, and having a reliance on God where he will see you through as you diligently work and provide opportunities, as you diligently maybe seek entrepreneurship. Like I said, for me, I did a commute back and forth. We live in a day and age where a lot of individuals have the ability to telework, right? Where they only have to come in for a few moments. An opportunity where we can also be independent consultants and contractors and provide that diversity so that we can be able to sustain ourselves, right? As we make this faith walk. Let me just keep going. Everywhere the enchantments to sensual and dissipation, the tide of corruption and crime is continually swelling. Every day brings the record of violence, robberies, murders, suicides, and crimes unnameable. Life in cities is false and artificial. The intense passion for money getting, the whirl of excitement and pleasure seeking, a thirst for display, the luxury and extravagance, all are forces that with the great masses of mankind are turning the mind from life true purpose. The youth have almost irresistible power. And that's upon the youth, it has almost irresistible power. That's chapter 1. Living in cities, not God's plans. Surroundings in the cities are often a peril to health. The constant liability of contact with disease, the prevalence of foul air, impure water, impure food, the crowded, dark, unhealthy dwellings, huddled together in terraces and tenements. In the beginning, he placed our first parents amidst the beautiful sights and sounds he desired us to rejoice in today. The more favorable will be our position to secure health of body and of mind. And I always found it interesting that, every one of us could actually have our own space and allotment. Maybe not a big one, but space and allotment. All of America can fit in Texas and not have to have a high rise. But yet we're clustered into these small groups. And as we read here, we're losing out on a true benefit and purpose that God intended for us with all this land that he's given for us to have dominion over. Next one. The land is cultivated. It will, with the blessing of God, supply our necessities. We are not to be discouraged about temporal things because of apparent failures, nor should we be disheartened by delay. We should work the soil cheerfully, hopefully, gratefully, believing that the earth holds in her bosom rich stores for the faithful worker to garner stores richer than gold and silver. The mountains and hills are changing. The earth is waxing old like a garment. But the blessing of God, which spreads a table for his people in the wilderness, will never cease. And that is true. It has been a blessing and benefit to be able to garden with the little ones, right? A return to simpler methods would be appreciated by the children and youth. Work in the garden and field would be an agreeable change for the wearisome routine of abstract lessons to which their young minds should never be confined. To the nervous child who finds lessons from book exhausting and hard to remember, it will be especially valuable. And that's another thing, like with my middle son, he can do the work. We get through the work because we got to, right? We want to make sure, once again, sound mind, body. Certain subjects are super easy, lightweight for him. But I do find that he has the ability to analytically process, think, and try out things. Some of those things he try out be annoying. You already know, you're a parent. But the benefits of us, and honestly, my second one would be the one that I'll go and I'll do certain projects. Like when I was building a greenhouse, he's there working with me. Digging the foundation, he's there working with me. Aspects of garden, everyone, all of the kids, they got to be involved, right? Because, I grew up that way. I'd be dang if I'm here working and you ain't doing nothing. But it also helps to develop character building, learning, and the ability to practically try out things and seeing biology firsthand, seeing carpentry firsthand, seeing certain aspects of engineering firsthand in a practical sense and application. Because as I learn, I share with the kids, I expose them, I let them see, and it has been a benefit for them. Let me just keep father and mothers who possess a piece of land and a comfortable home are kings and queens. And that's it, family. I do hope that this has been helpful. I don't want it to be super long. I thank you so much for your time if you made it to this end, for watching all the way through. And I definitely want you to consider that with the little that you have, you can do exponentially great things with it in pertaining security. Whether it's the practical method of, buying the condo, working on increasing your income, increasing your opportunities, and using that asset when it comes to point of time of sale to be able to get something better, to grow, to get your ideal home. But in my heart of hearts, guys, I really do hope that you would consider having property in a rural location. For those who have the capital to do both, right? As you're tutoring, I pray that you do both, but I really do, hopefully, especially if you have a family, I pray it's beneficial for you too. If you believe it or not, it's beneficial for you. Do what you can to ensure that those little ones grow up in the character and development and mindset that will create them to be exceptional, who can stand before kings and queens, who can be able to have the greatest potential of life, not only for here and now, but eternally. And in that, I pray that you found this video helpful. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.